Always want to do this. We'll call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. January 9th, 2023. This is the Committee of the Whole Administration and Operations, held in the Council Chamber in Spencerville. Before we start, I'd like to wish everyone a happy New Year. Also, our mayor sends regrets. He will not be attending this meeting tonight. Moving on, number 2. The chair is looking for a motion to approve of the agenda as circulated. Moved by Councilor Martel, second by Councilor Ward. All in favor? Carried. 3, is there any disclosure of community interest and the general nature thereof?
Done by me. None here.
The chair will show no disclosure. Is there any business arising from the previous meeting held in the council chamber on December 5th, 2023? This package has been circulated in the agenda hearing. None? We're moving on to number 5. Number 5, we have a delegation tonight. Mr. Dave Malcolmson, application for zoning bylaw amendment 3609, County Road 21. Before you start, Mr. Malcolmson, I'd just like to inform you, you have 10 minutes. We won't start the clock, but take your time. Do we have Chris?
Yes, Chris Clark.
On Zoom. Thank you very much. The floor is yours, Mr. Malcolmson.
Alrighty, so you should have now have a document that I prepared today, trying to look at the chronological events that took place at our sawmill in the last 2.5 years as we've tried to get it off the ground. I want to highlight 2 or 3 salient points, and then I want to go to the last couple of pages, which kind of conclusions, which kind of states where we hope that the council goes. So our operation really began in April of 2021, and we were up for 6 weeks, and we had a catastrophic failure of the sawmill, which took us down for 6 of the next 8 weeks. And we were running 80-hour work weeks, 2 shifts. So the engine failed in the sawmill once, and then the engine failed again in the sawmill twice. During that 8 weeks, we kept everybody fully employed. And of course, because we weren't milling any wood, there was no wood kiln dry, and there was no wood to customers. So that was our first challenge. However, we pushed forward, and we realized we needed a workshop, and we needed a wood store, 2 wood storage areas, and we also needed our timber barn, which now holds our hardwood, softwood, and stress. And during those applications for permits, they were all granted. And we got to remember, at this point in time, there was major changes going on in Canada, right? COVID, the shortage of product. I mean, you couldn't get services. Nobody did anything when they were supposed to do it. It was just hell. But we persevered, and even though that being down for those 6 80-hour weeks almost put us under, we fought on. Then our next blow came when we got a visit from the Ministry of the Labor, and we were told our present setup would not work because our men on the edger had to take out a piece of lumber coming off the mill, make a 90-degree turn, and put it through the edger, and they didn't want us to do that. So then we decided to go to a 4th building. And my error that I did not apply for that permit. Then as we could go in there, then we have a visit from the mayor. That was at that point in time, Pat Say, all excited about we had employed 12 people, paid them really good wages, and life was wonderful in his mind. Then all hell broke loose on November when we got a letter from the township saying that we're way offside with our sawmill. Now, the frustrating, and so the last 14 months have been really tough with Pam and I. We've tried to navigate through that. And then we find out you're only allowed to use 2% of your land, which should have been 0.7 of an acre. And you can't run much of a sawmill on 0.7 of an acre. And even our log storage would have to be included. So it was awful. So we started scrambling. So I talked to Mick McGuire. Mick, can you rent me a couple acres of land? But I gotta make sure Mick doesn't go over his 2%. Talk to Tim Cooper, can I take our address number down to your location? And these men were willing to pay the ball with this. However, at the end of the day, I still couldn't get to the 2%. I think what we asked for 4%. But to be quite frank, trying to run a business with your lumber you want to sell not on site is certainly a hell of a challenge, and it really didn't work. So thankfully, come the fall, this past fall, they had changed the rules. So we no longer can have 0.2% of our property, we can have up to a hectare. So with the hectare, we thought we can make this thing work. So rather than go to Mick and say, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get the drainage put in for us to store those logs. I said, hey, we can now think we can keep them on our own site, which we paid $200,000 in gravel and stone to have a very proper way to store those logs so they wouldn't rot. I mean, but we were gonna have to throw that all away. And we brought all our wood back with Tim Cooper's to find out we had more lumber than we thought. And for the speed of time, we thought there was a light at the end of the tunnel, but we still could not get down to 2%. Like there's just no way. And we then recommended 4% with the idea then that we would keep the logs over a mix and the lumber down at 10s, but that is not very effective. So now if I can have you turn to the report that I gave you, and come to the third page in from the back. So I'm a Canadian Tire dealer, had been since I was 30 years old, and now 38. Worked in Elmira, Ontario, I'm up in New Brunswick. In 91, I opened a brand new store for the tire in Fuller, Nova Scotia, built in a field. And then we opened one in 96 in Canada again, started in field. So these were brand new stores. Opening this mill has been worse than opening either one of those two Canadian Tire. Incredibly stressful, can't believe. And I believe that I think the township should have done a better job communicating with us from day one. And Wendy and I had this conversation, but I would not have invested 1.5 million if I had been stopped because I could only use 2%. But we were well over the 2% and then told you got to stop. So I think that is a bit of an issue, and I don't blame anybody there. But I hope going forward the township then hire someone that will make sure people know that are bringing the small business to the market, that can be a challenge. So we just think we should have been given better guidance. And again, from the time that I believe we were offside, we invested $1.5 million. Think about that. And then be told you're offside. In that time, we opened 2 coveralls, prepared the land and all those coveralls, bought a $200,000 piece of equipment to grind up our mulch. So where's the compromise here? So we think the compromise is Novatech says, hey, we still only think we should use 0.41. And we think, no, we need the hectare, but within reason. We're okay with the fact that we only can have 1.4 or 1,400 square meters of buildings. We're okay with that. We can live with that. All right, what we can't live with is we have no extra room for log storage and lumber. And we are in a unique business because of half loads. Half loads go in effect February to March 1st and are in effect for 2 months. Then the loggers, the guys that cut these logs, have to get the equipment to their woodlots. They have to set up their equipment, set up a landing for the haulers to pick up the logs, and then deliver those logs to us. So it's 3 months minimum that I cannot buy logs. They have to be sitting on site. So by the end of February this year, I have to have enough logs on that property to get me through probably the 1st of June. And we can't do that in 0.41% of my land. Because we also brought that lumber back from Tim Cooper's, we also realized now we have a lumber issue. I have more lumber than I thought I had, but there was no electronic system that controls our inventory. It's all done visually. Another couple of side notes that I think are important is that currently we build a timber barn on my old garden. We build a workshop where the machine shed was. And the land between those two buildings was always grass. So for a good chunk of this, we weren't farming it anyway. It was my garden, it was a machine shed and grass. But now that has to count. So we really didn't take that land away from agricultural use. It was never there in the first place. The other part I think it's important is that Mick says, okay, Dave, I'm gonna lend you or rent you 1.5 acres of land. So that you don't have to use your 1.5 acres of land, but I think that is so, I don't understand that. So we're gonna take 1.5 acres of his land that he's farming. So that I can use 1.5 acres for my mill, that I will then go back and farm. So there's no common sense there. Whether we use 1.5 acres of mixed land to store the logs, or we leave the 1.5 acres of land for logs. Like it's the only difference is it's 100 feet away. It's the same thing. So I believe at the end of the day, at the last paragraph in Novatech's report, they said that you guys have the final say. All they can do is make a recommendation. And they also presented the fact that they really felt that we should honor the size of the buildings. And we're prepared to honor that. What we can honor, or we need more room, is to store that lumber and to store those logs. That's my challenge. So I hope at your leisure, you read the other 11 pages. Just what Pam and I have gone through, and it's been hell. And on top of that, we've had the Ministry of the Environment there that was sent from the township. They challenged us on 3 issues. One was noise, which we spent thousands of dollars and fixed. One was emissions, which Matt Morris came and said, "Isn't it sad? I got to charge you $2,100 when you had no more emissions than you had before you moved the mill." But I still pay the $2,100, and now we still have an issue with mulch. So my man that I had hired, Doug Fisher Tree Services from Stittsville, was supposed to come and take away all the mulch, pay us $8 a cubic yard. So he then reneged on his deal because of the directive that went through and took down all those trees, and then he was hired by the city of Ottawa to handle all their trees. He even went down to handle Hurricane Ian in New Brunswick and Cape Breton to get rid of all those trees. And so he was not able to help us out. Like he was just not able to come. He said, "Dave, I will be there in 2023 for you." And then he came to see me 2 weeks ago and says, "Can't do it because there's still thousands of acres of trees that are down that have to be handled." And he's gone and bought an air burner. So in my report, I say that we've spent $2.25 million. Well, now I need to go buy an air burner myself for $100 grand by the time I get it here from the States. Because I need to be able to burn that stuff if I can't sell the mulch. Because the Ministry of the Environment is not the easiest people in the world to get along with. And he wanted me to ship it all to Kingston, but I called a lawyer who called his boss and he said, "Give these guys some time," because there was some freaking direct. Like this is not normal. So anyway, I humbly ask you to read the report that we presented and give us the hectare. I guess that's all I can really say. And thank you for your time. Chris, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, if the committee would allow me just a minute or two. I know we're close to 10 minutes here, if not a little bit over, but I just want to reiterate the fact that the draft bylaw before you has 2 sort of provisions in it. The first one stating the maximum floor area of all buildings shall be limited to 1,400 square meters. So even if we go above the 4% up to 1 hectare, which I think would be 7.7%, as Dave mentioned, the 1,400, we don't need any more building area. So we're not asking to change that or have more buildings. We're just asking for a little bit more lot area in order to accommodate some of the log storage that Dave needs. And as you can see, the business is dynamic, things change. I think any business owner will attest that rarely anything goes as planned. So, you know, we can limit it to 4% and he can have exactly what he has, or we can provide him some of the flexibility that he needs to continue operations. And then it's also important to point out that the staff report indicates that site plan is still required after the rezoning of this property. So if we do add additional storage and go above the 4%, that can be sort of shown and regulated through site plan where that additional storage goes. And if the concern is additional loss of agricultural land, we can look at options with the township to design that additional storage in areas that'll minimize as much of agricultural loss as possible to ensure that that's still the predominant use on the property. So I just wanted to reiterate that, going above the 4%, there's still a little bit of control that the township has. And, it doesn't necessarily result in, an additional 3% loss of agricultural lands at the end of the day. That's all I wanted to add. I just wanted to reiterate those couple points. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Thank you, Mr. Malcolmson.
Mr. Johnson.
Will, any questions before Mr. Malcolmson leaves?
No, I don't think so anymore.
We'll take this into consideration. Thanks very much, Mr.
Thank you,
Malcolmson.
anything else?
And have fun at the hockey game.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Go, Sam, go.
take care.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is number 6, a discussion item, and that is myself. I'm gonna bring it. So this here is something new that we decided after we were elected, some of us, to help to get the residents more involved and updated in what's going on in the Evansburg Cardinal Township. We would like to call it Doors Are Open. How it would work: once a week on Fridays from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. One of our council members will be at the following location: Spencerville Library 1 week, Johnstown Community Center the next week, and then Greeting Center on the 3rd week. This would give the residents a chance to bring forward suggestions and ideas. By no means it's a place for residents to let off steam or negative comments. There's a form on our website to help the residents get the proper feedback. And this would be starting February 10th to August 11th, 2023 on a trial basis. What I'm looking for from the council is to have the council members be on board and represent your ward. And from our staff is to put information on the website, Facebook, and keep that updated. And make sure that the buildings that we're recommending be available. And that is in a nutshell. I'm open for questions. Mr. Martel?
No question, I like the idea.
Just need you on board.
Oh, yeah, I'm there.
Perfect.
I'm on board. I have a question though.
Shoot.
Should I move it first by the way or not?
Well, I'd just rather get some of the suggestions and questions before, and then we can move. Okay. Go ahead,
You
Walter.
were saying something about, we could represent our ward, but could we not, if someone doesn't show up in Spencer?
Absolutely. Go to 3, 2.
That's all
I don't, yes,
Doesn't matter
absolutely.
where we go.
Doesn't matter where you. And go ahead.
As far as moving those, or my support, I mean, as the deputy mayor is aware, we've been talking about this for a while. Our campaign promise to try and create this open doors or doors open aspect, and so I definitely support it, obviously. And with that, if nobody else has anything, I'd like to move the motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Waddy Smale, that committee recommends that council, 1, supports the proposed weekly public doors open meetings organized by the deputy mayor and the ward councillors, and 2, that the meetings will be held on Fridays with a rotation schedule of Ward 321 within designated municipal facilities, and number 3, that the meetings will run for a 6-month trial period beginning on February 10th and ending on August 11th, unless otherwise extended by resolution of council, and 4, that the meetings will be advertised on the township website, calendar, and other social media accounts.
Thank you. Motion's on the floor. Any questions? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Moving on, number 7, action and information items. 7A. The subdivision plan 1069 final acceptance and release of security block subdivision. There's a briefing note in our package, And I would like our community development officer to speak on this, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So thank you, Chair. So there's a plan of subdivision that was registered in 1979. Street, Barber Street, Glenway Ave, parts of Sutton Drive, and Sophia Street. The subdivision agreement has a clause in there where lots 13 and lots 4 were conveyed to the township, and they're held as security to ensure all the work required by the subdivision agreement is completed. So not last year, in 2020, in August, we released lot 13 at the request of the owner. Most of the work had been done, and you can imagine this is a subdivision plan from 1979. So just not all of the lots had been developed yet. So we were confident that the work had been done except for the drainage works. At that time, not all the lots had been developed, so we couldn't confirm that the drainage works were done according to the plan. So at the request to release the final security, which is lot 4, we've asked Greer Galloway on behalf of the township to complete a site visit and confirm that all the drainage works that were in the approved plan were completed. They're satisfied that the works generally conform to what was approved, and staff are satisfied that the work required by the subdivision agreement has been completed. And we recommend that the final security slot 4 can be released. So the cost of that engineering review is borne by the owner development, and they're aware and have agreed to do so.
Thank you. Community development officer. Any further discussion on this, please?
Well, just so I'm clear a little bit on it, so they met the requirements from 1979, or they met the requirement. I'm sorry, by the way, I didn't ask you this earlier, but I wasn't sure if those standards maybe have changed and if they adhere to those new standards, or if it's the 1979 rule, or I was stand on that. So through the chair, I guess.
I think what it is, the subdivision was registered in 1979. And the developer of Winchester purchased that land several years later. Is that right?
To the chair, I'm not sure of the history of the ownership of that subdivision, but it's owned right now by a number company 205-7700 Ontario Inc. And so the subdivision plan, it included a drainage plan, which you can see on page 10 of 153. And so that's what was approved by the township. That's what they're required to go by. You can imagine there may be some slight differences over the past 40 years or 40 years. But Greer Galloway did actually do a site visit and confirm that they were satisfied that it generally conformed with the plan, which is what they're required to do. They're required to conform with what was approved.
Mr. Smell?
The mayor, the first house that was built on that street, I bought a new home on it, built a new home on that street was 17 years ago, so.
Okay.
And I work for the village of Cardinal in the township, where we put the drainage in there, so. It definitely works. Just thought everybody should know that.
Any other questions? No? I'd just like to say that I know the subdivision, and it was registered in 79, and the contractor from Winchester purchased it. 31 homes, I think, is built there up to this date. And we have a clause in it for security and construction maintenance, and it's been completed. So all I have to say is the developer has shown nothing but good workmanship and professionalism. And I'm hoping the developer will continue to work on other projects in our township. So if I can, I will need a motion for the recommendation. Recommendations, the committee recommends the council approves the release of lot 4, plan 1069 as security, and direct staff to have legal transfer to the deed to lot 4 back to 205-7700 Ontario Inc. Once payment for the engineer review has been received by the township. Moved by Mr. Smell, seconded by Councillor Ward. All in favor? Carried. Seven B. I think we just went through a little bit of that just a few minutes ago, so. Getting right to that, is we have an application for zoning bylaw amendment at 3609 County Road 21, Zanderberg, Inc. On behalf of Malcolmsons. This here is an extended on this application, there's lots of information. It's been lots and lots of information, so I'd like to have our development officer please fill us in.
Deputy Mayor, so through the chair. So the Committee of the Whole Community Development reviewed this application at the regular committee meeting on October 3rd. The proposal reviewed at the time provided that the current sawmill operation covers 3.97% of the property or 0.51 hectares. And the application requested special exception zoning to limit the size of the operation to 4%. So a public meeting was held on December 5th last year to hear comments on a revised application, which requested that up to 1 hectare of land be used for the sawmill as an on-farm diversified use. The site plan shows 4 buildings associated with the sawmill operation, which total approximately 1,400 meters squared of floor area. And I understand there was discussion, here tonight and at the public meeting about building permits, and the permits are included in the agenda package. So there's a lot of information in the agenda package. You got a report by Novatech and a draft bylaw. The written comments we've received to date are included. Planning rationale prepared by Zanderplan on behalf of the property owner is included, as well as the site plan and the building permit, as I mentioned. So the report prepared by Novatech for council's consideration includes a review of the planning policies and recommendation based on their review. The proposed bylaw would prevent the continued sawmill use on the property while limiting the size of the operation to 4% of the total lot area and limiting the floor area for the relevant buildings or the related buildings and structures to 1,400 meters square.
Thank you very much. For a call is open for discussion.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've had, as you said, a number of conversations in the last CDC meeting, as well as the public hearing, public meeting, and everything else, and there's been some compelling discussion about this 1 hectare space, but understandably, we don't want to have too much agricultural land that can't easily be returned back to agriculture should the needs of the business, et cetera, change. So I'd like to put forward that we just update that 4% to the 7.7% that's recommended by the planner, knowing that we would keep the 1,400 meters squared in that criteria, so we keep the building size the way it is, but they have room to grow. I think they would find that would also help with reduced truckload, because they wouldn't need to bring in half truckloads, I would hope, in the winter time. And I know that was one of the concerns that people had mentioned during the public hearings, is a public meeting part of me was about the number of trucks going down that road. So I think that my feeling is that's a safe bet for us to move to, with knowing we keep the cap of the building space at 1,400 meters square. So that's my take.
You're moving the motion
I'd like to, unless it's not the right time to do that. Yep, I'd like to just take the exact recommendation that we have here and change it to 7.7% of the total area in the last sentence.
Do you have a second?
I do. Councilor Wallace now.
Moved by, did you get that, Mrs. Clerk? Mr. Clerk, Mrs. Clerk? Thank you. So I'm going to read is there any more discussion on this, please?
Any discussion, just a question through you, Mr. Chair. When we were issuing these building permits for the buildings, at any point at that time, were we told this was going to be a commercial operation as an industrial sawmill?
I will take that. Who would like to answer that? Mr. CEO?
Certainly, Deputy Mayor and Chair, I would say, as indicated on the permits, it certainly was not clear, I would say, to the chief building official that there was a potential for a commercial sawmill activity. I would say probably permit number 3, that the understanding may have been with respect to a home industry type sawmill operation like a woodworking shop. Certainly, with permit number 4, it became quite evident that the size had grown substantially. So, and I guess, since I've had an opportunity to speak, I will note that there's been a few occasions where it has been noted by the owner that the township contacted Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks on this particular property. That is inaccurate, to say the least. From all of my understanding, staff has not contacted Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to report this. Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks has contacted the township, and we have certainly had conversation with MECP.
So for the record, we. as
For
township,
the record.
We did not
on-
call.
On a few occasions, we did not initiate the conversation with Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks.
Good to hear. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Go ahead.
Second question
Yeah.
for you, if we don't approve this, what are the other options?
Good question. Well, we take the recommendation of the 4%. That Novotel, that they're recommending.
I got the recommendation, but what I'm saying is, no, if we don't want to rezone this, what are the other options? For the site, if we say no, we're not gonna, our commercial.
We're not gonna give them 2% or anything. We're gonna, I'll go back to the Mr. CEO again.
Through the chair, I would say that if you would not permit a zoning bylaw amendment, that they would be in non-compliance, non-permitted use, and I would say that potentially an approach may be to want to, have the owner close up shop.
Does that answer your question?
Pretty much, yeah.
Any other questions? So we have a motion on the floor. The committee recommend the council amend zoning bylaw 2022-37 to include agricultural special exception zone for the property at 3609 County Road 21 in order to prevent a sawmill on the farm of diversified use, limit the floor area for related buildings and structures of 1,400 meters, and limit the sawmill operation to 7.7%, or 1 hectare equals 2.47 acres. That is the motion. All in favor? Against? Pass. Did you get this? Thank you. 7C, an application zoning bylaw amendment, 3485 Glensmell Road, engineering survey on behalf of HFI Promontories. Now, this one here, pretty straightforward, I do believe. If you could speak on it, please, Wendy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we've got an application for zoning amendment at 3485 Glensmale Road, which proposes to rezone the land from rural to rural industrial special exception 1 holding zone. So to accommodate the long-term expansion plans for HFI Pyrotechnics. A public meeting was held on November 5th to hear public comments on the application. There is a final report prepared by NoTech and a draft bylaw included in the agenda package. So the proposed bylaw would limit uses on the 123 hectare site to a business engaged in the manufacturing and testing of pyrotechnic products subject to a holding zone provision. Now, a holding zone provision is something I know even the CDC committee or council may have seen a lot before, but it's going to ensure that as development plans evolve for the site, that the appropriate studies are provided to address official plan policies for land use compatibility and to address on-site development constraints. So it basically only allows the existing uses on the property as the holding zone is lifted, which I understand HFI plans to do in stages. Then it would allow the rural industrial special exception zone provisions to prevail. So and they would complete the required studies as the holding zone provision is lifted for that area. So yeah, staff recommendation is that committee recommend that council amend zoning bylaw 2022-37 to include a rural industrial special exception holding zone for the 123 hectares of land at 3485 Glen Road to limit the permitted uses on the site to a business engaged in the manufacturing and testing of pyrotechnic products, subject to a holding zone provision.
For a call, the recommendation, any discussion on this?
Not big deals, but through the chair, when we talk about removing the holding zone, we can do it in sections and it's just determined by what they determine they want to take off of that, or is it we take it by lot, or how's that organized? I guess it's not a good last.
Through the chair, it would be based on the applicant would have a proposal. They would submit an application to lift the holding zone. They might not propose to lift the entire site. It would be based on their development plans. They mentioned in their planning rationale that they do have plans for an office building on the site in the southwest corner, I believe it is. Of the 123 hectares. So I don't think that they intend to lift the whole. Development plans are what studies are going to be required to lift it. That office building isn't near any of the aggregate resources that are on the site, so we wouldn't need an aggregate impact assessment, but it is within significant woodlands, so we've asked for an environmental impact statement. So our official plan in the policies requires us, when we have a holding zone, in the zoning bylaw, to list what studies would be required to lift the holding zone. We've listed all the studies that would apply to the whole site, but we would only apply the ones that are relevant to the area that they want to lift.
Okay, and through the chair as well, again, to the CDC. I think they talked about it was more just in an office building, but also they had light manufacturing in there of non-explosive. So that would be built into the site plan agreement, I'm assuming. They talk about light manufacturing as well in there and the aspects of that as well.
Through the chair, we don't have a lot of details on what is proposed in the office building. That would come when they come with an application to lift the holding zone. But I do understand that there's no pyrotechnics in that building. That's my understanding. And we'll see those details as well. The site plan control agreement would come after the proper zoning is in place for that. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate that this is all about the holding zone in place and the adjustments there. And you know, I think the feedback we got from residents during the public meeting were favorable in most cases, just making sure that it had the right distance setbacks from residents. So okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Mason?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Nothing? I'd just like to say that HFI has increased their staff over the last several years, and they made great strides improving and expanding their business. And we've had them here a couple times. HFI is showing great working relationship with the residents in the area and the professionalism with their council and staff. So I mean, they've done everything in their powers. So they're just a great company to work with. They'll go better. No problems. I feel so. If there's no other questions, I'm going to read the recommendation. The committee recommends that council amend zoning bylaw 2022-37 to rural industrial special exception holding zone for the 123 hectares of land, 3485 Glensmere Road, to limit the permanent use on the site of business engaged in manufacturing and testing pyrotechnic products subject to holding zone provision. I need a mover and I need a second. Moved by Chris Ward, second by Mr. Martell. All in favor? Carried. Seven D. 2022 municipality. Election accessibility report. This report. Is an information item only. It's a very important report. It has to be done under the Municipality Election Act, I do believe. Is that right? And our clerk puts in many hours of overlooking our 3 polling stations, Spencerville, Johnstown, and Cardinal. This is a very labor intense report. So saying that, Madam Clerk, would you give us a little report?
Thank you, through the chair. As the deputy mayor has indicated under section 12.13 of the MEA, it's required by myself to report on the identification, removal, prevention of barriers affecting electors and candidates with any type of disability. I put this forward at a committee level as well as through the public website, social media, etc. Just so that way it's acceptable. You guys are aware of it as well, and circulated if need be, if anyone's interested. Along with identifying any accessibility, prevention, identification barriers. I give you an overview of what happens in the election, what we've encountered, voter turnout rate. So as you can see, voter turnout rate for 2022 is slightly lower than in 2018, with a voter turnout rate of 47.9%. However, this is still an increase compared to the majority of municipalities across Ontario, with the average being in the 35 to 36 range. So for a small municipality of just over 5,000 electors, we're still doing very good with our methods of voting. With that being said, since 2013, sorry, I'm not today, 2003, we had paper ballot voting. Prior to that, it was all paper ballot. It was pretty straightforward. In 2006 and onwards, we incorporated the electronic methods of internet and paper voting and telephone voting. So we incorporated all 3 methods that did show a slight increase and a steady increase thereof. From the 2018 to 2022 election, there was a 4.3% reduction in paper ballot voting. So there has been a very slow climbing trend that I expect we'll continue to see as more people become more and more comfortable with alternative voting methods. However, for future, unless things drastically change, I do recommend while we're in ward system to remain at status quo. Along with that, there was voters list. It's always managed by MPAC. 2026, we've been informed that Elections Ontario will be taking that over with the province. So I have high hopes that things might get on track a little bit better and make our lives a little bit easier for the months leading up to it, both internal staff and for candidates. As most of you are aware, it is a hectic time trying to get the voters list updated many times over between the original preliminary list to the interim list and communicating with both MPAC as well as candidates and the general population. There was some miscommunication with MPAC as to when the voterlookup.ca closed, and people were telling me that well, we just went there, you don't have to worry about it. Unfortunately, we had to inform them to come in because they did pass the deadline. MPAC did not inform them that it would not be taken into account. We have made that note clear to our MPAC contact, but come 2026, we won't have to worry about it with that. In general, staff prepared dedicated election websites. My deputy clerk had a great hand in helping with that because it was an ongoing process of updating on a continual daily basis. So between September 1st to October 24th on election day, we continuously received updates to the electors list, either adding, modifying, correcting, deleting, etc. So we had to keep a running tally on every single thing that happened, and then we communicate with all the candidates on the candidate portal. You guys got to see live time, people being added, deleted, modified, etc. To ensure additional accessibility, we completed a couple of virtual sessions for eligible electors that weren't able to come to the office due to mobility restrictions, as well as general health concerns with the pandemic and everything still going on. Some people weren't able leaving their homes due to autoimmune compromise, etc. So we've made special steps to take to assist those voters. We're walking them through. Some people that have never used a tablet before, but they did not want to expose themselves for risk. So we were walking them through the steps as to how to do this at home, on the phone, or by internet. We had a lot of information on our website as well, but some people just need the extra assistance. They never used it, weren't comfortable, so it worked. It is a working process. It's fairly straightforward, fairly easy, but for somebody that's never ever looked at a tablet or a laptop on their life, it took them an extra couple of minutes. But after they're done, they said they continued doing that again because it was so easy. It took less than 5 minutes, even with the couple minute delay. Additionally, again, this year we started in 2018. For 2022, we utilized the local Moose FM radio station for multiple ads from September all the way to the day before election day, providing electors with reminders to the deadline dates, confirming that they're on the voters list, providing the information that they need for their voter information letter, where they're able to vote, when they're able to vote, etc., etc. So with this, I think it has drastically improved again since 2018, the number of eligible electors. Just another form of accessible advertisement for us. It's a little bit of money we split amongst ourselves as well as a couple other local municipalities. It has drastically helped. The number of calls I can't even count just from people saying, I heard this on the local radio, because some people don't read the newspaper, some people don't look at the website on a daily basis, but people are driving to and from work and listen to the radio. For paper ballot voting and locations, like I mentioned before, there was a 4.3 decline in the paper ballot voting. That's nothing staggering, but it is, like I said, showing a trend. This year I elected to equip the polling station with 4 election workers, and previous years we've only done 3. A DRO, polling election assistant, as well as a greeter. I did 2 election assistants to help with enumerating and speeding up the process. That way people that do have accessibility concerns weren't waiting as long. There's always 1 or 2 that say that they were waiting for half an hour. I can confirm that wasn't the case. The max somebody had to wait to do by paper ballot was 10 minutes, and everyone was offered chairs, seating, refreshments, etc., etc., as well as assisting for anyone that needed it for walking and things like that for accessibility needs. We were advised with our greeters that they were greeting people. They were telling people, please have your voter information letter available, have your proper ID available, so that way there wasn't as much of a delay in the line, as well as a delay in each individual talking to our DRO to issue those paper ballots. Another accessibility feature I incorporated in 2022 was the use of iPads or kiosks for each location. We had seen a little bit of interest prior to that. In 2018, I did start just bringing in my work tablet for the location that I circulated to, but it wasn't a constant, consistent piece of device that everyone could utilize. So we did spend a couple extra dollars, do that out of my budget. People that were using it did like the feature, so I think it'll be something I'll carry forward in 2026. Promote it a little bit more heavily. This was more of a trial run. But there were some electors that had accessibility needs, didn't bring a friend, wanted to do it independently without having additional assistance from election assistance. So with the tablet, they were able to utilize the features on there. Good news, there was no technological errors or delays in the advanced electronic voting or during election day from IntelliVote or my auditor. Overall, we were very satisfied through staff with the voting system. And we were able to close the kiosks at 8 p.m. and receive our preliminary electronic count by 8:11 p.m. Shortly after that, at 8:20, I received all of the results from the auditor for the election. For electronic election portion, and the final paper ballot counts were received at 10:05 PM. I think that's closest to the fastest we've had in many years. Additionally, with the accessibility, like I mentioned, the electronic internet telephone kiosk voting, provides additional accessibility, access for those that need it, as well as for other area electors that aren't able to come to paper ballot voting. These are all requirements over EODA. We go above and beyond in our standards, simple things as, all 3 of our voting locations were at ground level. I go in and inspect all of them. We're glad we actually have facilities available to us in all 3 locations rather than trying to organize it with a school or a church or things like that. We are fortunate to have large facilities that we can manage this, and we don't have to worry too much about those. Additionally, I have attached a couple of just information for your background knowledge and for the public, from AMO. Some figures as well as a report from their website, and then I also included a couple page export report that I received from IntelliVote, our electronic vote manager system, and they provide additional election statistics of a breakdown of voting method, total amount that voted, who casted vote by what method. It gives you a good breakdown for future reference and to provide to electors if they're looking for that.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Well done. Any questions, Mr. Smell?
Just, I can't even imagine the daunting task, and you guys did a great job of keeping
Labor
everything
intense.
properly.
That's right. Very labor intense. Thank you very much, Mr. Martel.
Same thing, well done, very well done.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Moving on to 7E. Updates to the meeting recording policy. This here is committee of the whole is administration updating our meeting for recording policy. I will have the Madam Clerk touch on this too, please. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you through the chair. So during your orientation sessions and inaugural meeting, I heard from pretty much everyone at the table tonight, as well as those away, that you highlighted a need for increased openness and transparency within local government. One way to do that is to record and make public all of our meetings that are not closed to the public, so closed session meetings and camera meetings. Previously, our port management committee, public meetings, and committee of adjustment meetings were not available to the public, not recorded, only if they wanted to come in person or see the agenda online. I proposed in the draft edited version that you'll see attached behind this report, to increase open and transparency, to incorporate those 3 types of meetings into our regular scheduled recording and publishing to our website and YouTube page. With this, they will be published on our township page as well, on our website, where you find our general agendas and minutes. We have a special section built into that calendar specifically for our videos, which are linked again to our YouTube page. Everything comes full circle. And then the general recommendation is just approve it attached, and then if there's any suggested edits or questions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. You heard the briefing from Madam Clerk. The chair is open for any discussion. Mr. Smell? Mr. Ward?
I don't have a comment. No, I like the idea. I mean, when I was doing research on various things, in particular the port, you know, it was a lot of reading, and I appreciate the fact that we're going to be doing those as well in this way. And so like I said, I think that's a great idea. And you know, I think it's important to also note, as you mentioned here, understandably, this is a nice to have, and I mean, should we have a technical issue of some sort, it's understood that it is, you know, it's a backup to the official record, which is the agenda. So anyway, something that's important to know.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Mr. Martel?
Question for the clerk through you. Mr. Deputy Mayor, do we have any metrics on our YouTube channel on how many people actually go on there, individual users, returning users, anything like that?
Through the chair, I can see how many people have viewed it. I don't get to see who has viewed it, if they're returning ones. We have subscribers. I don't get to see that list. But we do have consistent numbers. Over the last year, year and a half, it has increased from 1 or 2 to half a dozen to 20 max. Unless there's a real hot button topic, then we might get, 25, 30. But it is reaching a good number compared to, we have 5,000 electors, 7,000 residents. Even it helps 1 or 2 people that may not be able to make it into our meetings in the evening and they have accessibility needs. This is another method for them to be able to achieve some type of, viewing of our meetings, whether it be come in here or wait for a day for us to upload this.
Also through the chair, without looking at them, have we given any thought at all to the blooper tape at the end of the year?
No comment.
I'm very excited with this, bylaw that we're gonna be putting forward, recommendation. I think it should for some, I feel this is well overdue. I feel that some of our committees should have been recorded for some time, so. With all of our committees to be recorded, it just gives us, open to the public. It shows the council wants to be more transparent approach. And have that open concept to the public that we all want, so. I think it's great, so in saying that. I will read. The motion. Or the recommendation, sorry. The committee recommends that council adopt the proposed updating meeting recording policy as attached. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Mr. Martell, second by Mr. Smell. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, thank you. 7E. And our next one is 7F 2022 Cardinal Industrial Park Water System Annual Report. And we're going to have our Chief and Water Sewer Operator, Eric Wyman. Please present your report.
Thank you. Through the chair, owners of municipal drinking water systems are required to ensure that annual reports are prepared in accordance with the conditions set out in section 11 of Ontario Regulation 1703 by February 28th of the following year. The owner must also take effective steps to notify the users of the systems when and where a copy of the report can be viewed or received upon request at no cost to the user. A local newspaper ad and social media feeds are used to advise system users of report availability. An electronic copy of the report is also placed on the township websites. The annual report is made up of a system description, a summary of monetary expenses incurred for 2022, a summary of any adverse water quality incidents that occurred in 2022, a summary of minimum and maximum chlorine, turbidity, and UV intensity readings for 2022, a summary of any lead sampling that was performed in both drinking water systems. Also, there is a summary of chemical results for various chemicals samples that we do throughout the year, and also a summary of inorganic parameters. So that's part of the whole chemical sampling parameters. You can see quite a long list of parameters that we sample twice a year in the Cardinal water system. This is part of requirement under OREG 17003, and the financial considerations are quite minimum, just the cost of newspaper ad. First year. I'm open if there's any specific questions within the annual report.
Thanks very much, Eric. Appreciate it. Well done. Any questions, Mr. Smell?
No, well done.
Mr. Ward?
No, I fell into the trap of looking at all the numbers and the data, the statistics and wondering, the short answer question, I guess, is, we're doing okay, it looks like on the water, essentially from the quality, is that a good take from that, for the chair?
Yes.
Well done, Mr. Martell, for nothing. Okay, I'm gonna read the recommendation. The committee recommends that council one, receive and review the 2022 annual water report for CWS and EDS. And 2, direct staff to post annual water reports to the township website. And 3, to direct staff to notify users via social media, newspaper of report availability. I need a mover, Mr. Snell, second, Mr. Ward. All in favor. Carried. And people, wow. That's unbelievable. First one, and we've done it in almost an hour. That's it for the business council. Number 8, council inquiries, notice of motion. Does anyone have inquiries, notice of motion? Mr. Martell, any?
Not tonight.
Mr. Ward?
I guess I'll have to make it into an inquiry. Is this really the first time you've chaired a meeting here, Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
You did a fine job.
Continue then. Keep going. I have one, and that is, I don't know if it's under inquiries, don't really care, but our public works people worked very, very hard on December 23rd to the 25th. Keeping our roads open, sidewalks clean. I can't tell you how great job you guys did. Pass it on, pass it on, pass it on to all of the good stuff. Well done. It's hard enough, it's bad enough to go out at night, especially that time of year. You got young families, maybe grandchildren. You did an excellent, excellent job. So that's all I have to say on that. Thank you so much. There's no mayor's report. Question period. No question. Closed session. No closed session. Before we adjourn, I'd just like to thank staff and our committee for your support of helping myself on my first time as chairing Committee of the Whole Administration Operations. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Now for the adjournment, I need a mover and a second. Moved by Mr. Snell, second by Mr. Ward. We adjourn at 7:33.